Welcome to the Revive, Thrive, and Optimize podcast. I'm Billy Weiss, compounding pharmacist and health and wellness expert. This morning, as always, across from me, my great co-host Janet, and the one who does all the work, Mike, behind the scenes. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Billy. Good morning, Mike. So Billy asked me to come up with topics a lot for this show. So when I'm out and about in my daily life or teaching my classes, I'm usually asking for subject matter. And 'tis the season of a lot of eating, right? So we had Halloween and we've got Thanksgiving and Christmas coming up. So I think a lot about sugar and bread and yeast. And with that, I would like to talk about yeast and yeast infections. And that subject has come up lately. And there are different types of yeast infections in the body that affect many different age groups. There's thrush in the throat, there's intestinal yeast, and there's vaginal yeast. And so that sounds really gross, but I think it's a topic that's important, and I'd like to ask you about that. So let's talk about yeast, and I don't mean bread, but I think bread will come in a little bit to the subject when we talk about diet and things that are good for getting rid of those types of problems.
Yeah, Janet, you mentioned there's three different areas where it seems most commonly that yeast kind of shows up. But the good news is the answer to all is kind of the same because it's all the same origin, right?
Right.
It kind of finds the weak spot for somebody, and that's where it kind of takes hold.
Well, tell us what it is. It's bacterial overgrowth, right?
Well, it's a yeast overgrowth, yeah. So it's where our immune system is just not able to handle, its normal duties in taking care of that. And there's certainly steps that we can take and talk about that will greatly, greatly reduce the risk of ever, getting that yeast infection. And then there are things that we can do to prevent it, almost universally for people. They just, once they go on a plan, they don't ever have that yeast again.
And when you say yeast, is all yeast candida?
Not all yeast is candida, but certainly the vast majority of what we see is candida.
Candida.
Yeah.
So I was, in my late 20s living in Los Angeles, and I was having a lot of problems with gas and bloating and fatigue and some skin rashes, just all types of problems being young. Had a horrible diet, worked 7 days a week, didn't sleep. And I got a free invitation to see this functional medicine doctor. And one of the first things that she did was tell me she wanted a fecal sample. And I was just like, oh no, how am I going to do that? And I learned how to do that. We sent it in, and one of the things that came back showed that I had a ton of intestinal yeast, candida overgrowth. And so I started a candida cleanse. And so that was my introduction really into starting to learn more about my body. And the first thing I had to do was stop eating sugar and maybe talk a little bit about intestinal yeast and what we can do about it, especially with the holidays coming up.
Well, I think you said a really important word there. You said overgrowth. It may be that we're all carrying some yeast. It's that we keep it under control. It's just like we all have some good and bad bacteria. It's keeping those bad ones from flourishing, right?
So it's like a balance.
So it's a balance in the system, yeah. So when we talk about an overgrowth of yeast, that's where the symptoms come in. And so you talk about, the bloating or the gas or some people, it makes them really hungry. And certainly skin conditions, we see a lot from that kind of thing.
You can kind of see it in your poop.
If you pay attention, sometimes you will see that. That's correct.
It's important to pay attention,
it is.
I think, to that.
And so, yeah, if somebody's having a problem, that is one thing they might want to take note of and try to be more, take more observation to see if they notice anything. So, yeah, you talked about sugar, though. So yeast just thrives. It grows on sugar. It grows on things that create a sugar response in our bodies.
And that would be alcohol, sweets, bread, pasta, anything that turns to sugar.
Rice, potatoes, anything that would spike our blood sugar. and create that response is going to feed that yeast and cause that overgrowth.
And boy, when you start starving the yeast, it is like you start craving it even more.
Yeah, and listen, one of the things that if somebody has an overgrowth like you probably experienced, when you start killing off that yeast, it can cause what's called a Herxheimer's reaction.
Huh. Never heard of that.
Which means that you might feel worse
Yeah.
before you feel
Absolutely.
better.
It's like these things are dying inside of you and they're starving and they're craving sugar.
And then your body is trying to get rid of those cells that are dead now, those yeast that are dead. And so Dr. Herxheimer discovered that certain things like yeast, kill off, can make us feel worse even though our body is getting better. Now, short term, we see that often with people who start drinking the Kangen water that I suggest. Not often, I shouldn't say that, but we do see it, that occasionally some people are so toxic, and I don't know that it's yeast or whatever toxins, but they will maybe have a day or two where they don't feel the greatest.
I guess that's like with the keto flu when you start.
Very similar. They'll ask me, what do I do? And I'll be like, drink more water.
Yeah.
And after a couple of days, then they'll go, wow. But it does occasionally happen, and it can certainly happen with yeast die-off. So that's something that people should know, is that it may make them crave more of the things that they shouldn't have, because the yeast is
it's almost like it's talking to you.
It's sending signals, saying, give me more. And they may feel worse in the beginning as they start to kill it off, but once they get over, we'll call it the hump, then they start to really feel better quickly.
And sometimes you just get almost there, and then you break down, and you go back and you eat a ton of sugar, and then it comes right back even worse.
Yeah, it
you
is.
Really have to follow it through.
Well, people just need to understand that the yeast loves that sugar, and so it is going to flourish in that environment. Doesn't mean that you can't ever have anything that has sugar, or anything that creates that sugar response, but it probably means that for a time you're going to have to severely limit those things to get over the overgrowth.
Yeah.
And then if you're doing the things that we'll talk about as we go through this podcast, hopefully you'd be able to go back to more of I'll call it a more balanced or traditional way of thinking in your food choices.
Well, and speaking of traditions, we have Thanksgiving coming up soon. And then I saw something online saying, this is November. No, N-O-Vember. Like, what can you say no to in November?
Yeah.
And I thought, November for me could be like no sugar until Thanksgiving weekend.
Right.
And then, kind of do a little cleanse throughout November, and then be able to eat balanced and healthy and whatever I want, for Thanksgiving.
Yeah, I've never heard it put that way, but November. But that's probably not a bad idea for people. As matter of fact, one of my daughter-in-laws is doing 75 days of really, really clean, super clean eating, and she started November the 1st. Now, I don't know if it was because of November.
Great.
I don't know that. And she said, I'm doing it right through the holidays. So.
Well, we need to get her in here after she finishes, see what she found out. So, I had that experience with intestinal yeast. When people get vaginal yeast, that can show up as like a thick cottage cheese kind of discharge, a lot of itching, even swelling, and I know from being a yoga teacher, one of the things that we recommend is, don't wear tight pants and tight leggings all the time, and quickly remove your sweaty tights and that kind of thing. So, what happens is it moisture that can make it worse, or?
Well, certainly moisture, if you're wearing clothes that you've done hot yoga in or worked out in and they're wet, that can certainly contribute to it. But I think the thing that is very uncomfortable for ladies. Unfortunately, I've seen a ton of that with ladies over the years. The good news is, though, Janet, just like the intestinal yeast, just like the thrush in the mouth yeast, the answers are still all the same. It is an imbalance of good and bad. You don't have enough good bacteria to take care of the the overgrowth of the yeast. So the first place we start is with the probiotic, one of the foundational four of the Optiyou, right? The probiotic. The other one that is extremely important in that foundational four is the magnesium. And not because so much that magnesium fights yeast overgrowth, but people with adequate magnesium levels have much better vitamin D levels, which is very important for fighting the yeast overgrowth.
Okay.
So when we can start to think of how to boost our body's immune system, and specifically for yeast, we're gonna use higher dose probiotics for those folks.
Okay.
We're going to use the magnesium out of the Optiyou Foundational 4, and then we're going to use the Prescriptions Plus Vitamin D with Super K. And we may even use the vitamin D in the beginning, 50,000 units for a short term
supplement.
Because we have a lot of people who overcome yeast without any of the antifungal drugs.
Yeah, I was going to say, is there anything over the counter or any prescription drugs?
Well, there are definitely prescription drugs that can be used to get rid of the yeast. The problem is, just like with any, and I'll kind of put it in the antibiotic category. It's not specifically an antibiotic. It's for yeast.
But there's side effects, I'm guessing.
It creates a situation that kills off some of the good bacteria. So the probiotic. Yeah. So what we often see is these ladies will, specifically for the vaginal yeast infections, they will take we'll call it diflucan. Fluconazole is the most common one. And they'll take that and they'll be better for a month or a week or 2 weeks or 2 months, and then it comes back.
So it's short term?
It is. And then they'll take it again and they'll kill the yeast off again, and then they haven't changed any of the other
They're still eating sugar.
They killed off some of their good bacteria. So now it comes back. And so what we try to, educate them about is, hey, if you're going to take the diflucan, great, but you have to take extra probiotics right now. You have to stay on the probiotics. You have to use the magnesium.
Don't eat sugar.
Use the vitamin D. You have to change what you're eating.
What about yogurt?
Well, yogurt, if you look at the real studies, Janet, yogurt can have a little bit of probiotic, but not enough living probiotic to really do anything. I heard one doctor say, you could eat every container in the grocery store and you wouldn't get enough. Yeah.
Well, and probiotics, I think, it's very popular. Everybody knows what probiotics are, but nobody seems to know what type of probiotic to get. And so I used to think that I had to spend, $100 and get the most expensive bottle, and it had to be refrigerated. And then I started taking your probiotics. They don't have to be refrigerated, much easier and much cheaper. So tell us the difference in probiotics.
So here's the first problem is, Janet, in the studies, over 99% of the so-called probiotic products are dead bacteria, which means they're worthless. So then they came up with the idea, hey, you have to keep them in the refrigerator. The problem is they tell me that they can't live at, we'll call it 70 on my counter at my house, but they're supposed to live at 98.6 in my body.
Gut. Okay.
So it's a flawed theory, and they do typically charge more for
a lot more.
So it's great marketing. I just don't see the science behind it.
And then you can't travel with them if they have to stay cold all the time.
And then that's right. And so what we did was I formulated a 10 strain probiotic. So we have different strains. That's important, right? Because a lot of probiotics are just lactobacillus acidophilus, one strain. That won't really do much, if anything, for people. Plus, it's probably not even alive when they take it.
So yours is 10 different strains.
There's 10 different strains in the Optiyou probiotic.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And they are stable up to 107 degrees.
Okay.
So as long as you don't leave them like in a car in a hot sun or somewhere like that, they're going to be perfectly okay to at least 107 degrees.
Well, that's good news.
And probably above. So yeah, we can travel with them. We can take them anywhere. We're getting the 10 different and the most studied and most beneficial probiotics is how this was formulated, how I developed it. So,
Well, thank you for formulating that.
yeah, well, it works tremendously well for a lot of situations. We're specifically talking about yeast, but we also see a lot of skin conditions, which may be from the probiotic helping the yeast.
Constipation,
all the things we would think of, like the reflux, the heartburn, those kind of things, the indigestion. We combine that with the Optiyou digestive enzyme, and we wipe that out. So what people need to know, I think that's most important, is what it is an imbalance of not having enough good bacteria in our system and having too much yeast in the system. And so that creates that imbalance or that overgrowth.
And it is kind of like that visualization of bread rising. It's like the yeast rising.
The yeast is expanding.
I've never really experienced thrush. And what are the symptoms and who normally gets that? And can you have intestinal yeast, thrush, vaginal yeast all at the same time?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Thrush is where people will typically, if you look in their mouth and their tongue, they'll have little white dots that are painful.
Yeah.
And they'll have, coating
and it's
on
painful.
their tongue.
Okay.
A lot of them can have soreness, like they're trying to drink and it hurts. It's uncomfortable. It can itch just like the vaginal.
And do babies get it more?
Babies can get thrush. And again, it's an imbalance of the probiotic. One of the best things to ever give a newborn the day they're born is the probiotic.
Just put it right on the nipple.
Right on the nipple or in the bottle if they're not breastfeeding. Is a small dose of probiotic, which will also, for most kids, take care of any of their, when they throw up after they eat. That's not the word I'm
reflux,
looking for. Reflux kind of thing for them. But when they have that will normally absolutely solve that. As a matter of fact, I know it's not what we're talking about, but it's the same concept. I had a young couple at church who had their second baby, and they did a lot of stuff with me over the years and have done very well themselves and with their first child. And this second baby was throwing up every time she fed him. And the doctor wanted to put him on some, I can't even remember what the drug is right now, but I was like, oh my gosh. So she texted me and she said, I don't want to do this. I started looking at side effects of this. She's like, my several week old kid needs this. And I was like, well, Savannah, I think you ought to do probiotic and the enzyme. And literally her husband texted me back within, I bet it was 2 or 3 hours later, and said, I know you've never heard this before, but that worked perfect. He hadn't thrown up again. And now weeks later, or maybe a month later now, he's had no issues.
Well, it's like, and when you go to the store, and now there's a big hype about protein. So everything's fortified with protein, even your candy bars, right? Just as a gimmick to get you to buy it.
I was walking through Ingles, and I saw cereal, like, I don't remember what it was, like Fruit Loops or
and it's got
one
protein.
of them, and it said, protein fortified with protein.
Same thing with probiotics. So I'm seeing all these people carry around these like probiotic gummies, and you look at the ingredients, and it's like corn syrup, and sugar. With a probiotic, are you getting any probiotic into your body? It's a total gimmick. That's
I would tell you that you're probably harming your existing
doing more harm than good.
And we find that with a lot of products, though, Janet, not just the probiotics, right? We find it with, the studies say over 95% of supplements have toxic ingredients in them. So, that's just a sugar bomb. That's doing nothing. There's no living probiotic there. Even if there was, you're going to offset it with all the, like you said, the corn syrups and the dyes and the colors and the fillers and the things that should never be in a.
I think it's good you're making your kids aware and explaining what it is, but then you're handing them something that's making the problem worse, so they don't get to experience
they don't understand that they're making it worse. And the reason that you mentioned that a lot of infants especially can maybe get thrush is just that their immune system, when they, and they've shown this in studies, their immune system is just not adapted yet, right? And so maybe their probiotic status is low, or maybe the mom had to have an antibiotic during pregnancy. And so probiotics are an absolutely amazing thing for young moms to take themselves during pregnancy and then to use with their newborns and all the way up through adulthood with their children. And it changes. I mean, I've had so many women tell me it changed my kid. Like my kid used to scream. My kid wouldn't sleep. My kid would eat and throw up. My kid would scream every time we fed them. And now they don't do that. Or my
Something
kid was
so
constipated.
simple as the right
simple
probiotic.
Simple. And we're using really small doses for them because, again, there's 10 powerful probiotics in my formula. And it's designed for an adult. So we tell them just use a little sprinkle. You know, just every time they eat, use a little sprinkle. And that's all it takes.
I am,
in most
you know,
cases.
and I know personally I love your probiotic because I tend to be constipated as long as I'm taking the probiotic. I'm not, I used to be, you know, prone to yeast infections. Don't get those anymore.
Right.
And then the other thing someone wanted me to ask you about was I think there's something you can insert that is like maybe boric acid. Mm-hmm. Does that?
We compound boric acid suppositories that can definitely help with the vaginal yeast.
How long does that generally take to help it clear up?
We usually do 10 to 14 days.
Okay.
But honestly, Janet, it's a better option than a diflucan, an antifungal drug, because it's not killing any of the bad bacteria. Any of the good bacteria, excuse me. But we find that almost every single person, especially with the vaginal and the thrust, can easily clear it up with the probiotics, the magnesium, and high-dose vitamin D. So, we do it all the time. We have ladies do it all the time without any boric acid or without any diflucan or any of those types of things. And as long as they stay on that, I mean, look, I tell women, and I make it probably too simple for them. I mean, honestly, they'll say, you know, I just don't understand why I got another yeast infection. I'm like, you just don't have enough probiotics. It's about that simple. Now, vitamin D does play a huge role in the immune system's function, and that's where magnesium comes in, because that helps the body use or absorb, I should say, the vitamin D much more efficiently. As a matter of fact, the study shows that somebody with low magnesium levels has to take double the amount of vitamin D that somebody with adequate magnesium levels has to take to get to that same blood level of vitamin D.
You know, I think that, you know, this protocol that you're saying, enough magnesium and D and taking the probiotics and cutting out the sugar and giving yourself a couple of weeks, you know, can take care of it. But at the same time, like I look at it, like I've got a friend that just came to me and she's very young. And I told her, you know, this is an opportunity actually for you to learn about your body and see how something can work, because she came from a background where she never learned how to eat correctly and is kind of always eating bad and has this overgrowth. And I'm like, hey, here's an opportunity, right? You have to look at the problems that you have as an opportunity to learn something, and then you move forward. And so I think that, you know, any problem that we have, let's look at it like an opportunity. Let's get some education, you know, do these protocols, and then it works and you're successful, and then you can share that with somebody else. And I'm leading up to, you know, once again, wanting to talk about second weekend in January. You're going to do your weekend summit, 2 days of an insane amount of information that we will be coming to take it for the 11th time, and we will learn more, because we learn more every year. So I think that we need to get it up somehow online. That
it's online. It's on the Optiyou site, but I'm sure Mike can put the link to it.
Yeah,
And we need to remember that it's limited, Janet. We only have so much space there in the pharmacy where we set up. And anybody who has already come through the weekend, and this is only for people who've come through the weekend, they use the code OPTIGraduate, OPTI graduate, all one word.
Okay.
And they get a discount toward, you know, their coming back.
That's
so
great.
They never pay full price again once they've come through.
You know, and I think the reason for coming back, because I know a lot of people who've done it, they've done it over the years, and I'm encouraging them to come back, because you can't absorb it all.
No.
And I think the reason is, you know, you kind of have your filters where you hear things that you're ready to hear. And now I know I'm ready to hear even more that I wasn't ready to hear last year, right? You know, so little bits at a time, you know.
Well, I think what you said is important. Some of it is they have victories, and then they say, oh, God, this does work. I want to learn more. And so then they hear something the next time.
It's a ripple effect.
Somebody has already called and said, hey, I want to come back from last year.
Yeah.
And it's one of your folks. I can't think of their name right off, but
I know several.
So they'll
that are
use
wanting to come
Opti
back.
Graduate.
Okay.
When they go to checkout, if they'll just put in Opti Graduate, it'll discount it to the price for people who've already come through. And we give a huge discount for that because we want people to come back. And we want to honor the ones that have already come and paid full price.
And you get to hear the testimonials and the success stories.
Yeah.
And that's just so amazing. Literally I'll be in tears, and cheering because, you might have someone that a year ago, they don't think they've got long to live. They've got cancer. And then they're back this year and they're sharing these amazing
As you know,
victories.
we had that last year and it shocked even me. We were all crying. Because I'd talked to him several times via Zoom, and he had never really told me the whole story and how he never missed a day of work, how his family didn't even, outside of his wife, didn't even know he had cancer. He never, he's done, well, he's
and it
done
was a rare
that,
cancer, a very rare
it was
cancer.
two rare cancers together that I think only he was the first or second person ever to have that combination. And he has had, I don't know, Janet, now maybe 6 or 8 detailed. It's supposed to be the most detailed scan you can have for any cancer cells in his body, and he shows absolutely none. And he's exercising, riding bikes, raising money, working. He never told his family. He never told his work. He never missed a day's work. He did phenomenal.
So, whether it's a small yeast infection or whether it's a big stage 4 cancer, you cover it all.
Yeah.
And and so come out to the weekend, and if you have any more questions about yeast infections, comment, let us know. And
listen, Janet, the thing is, the beauty of this is what we're talking about, back to the yeast infections. They're 100% preventable, and they'll never have another one if they'll just do the right things. If they'll take the right probiotic, the right magnesium, the right vitamin D. And obviously with that, I'm going to always recommend my multi.
Yes.
And other things potentially that could help. But specifically, those 3 will clear up 99% of these things without any antifungals or any problems. And as long as they will go on to a maintenance dose, the likelihood of them ever having it again is very, very slim.
Good.
Very slim.
Awesome.
So I don't want to say that it's easy, but it really is pretty simple to correct and to prevent from ever coming back.
That's great to know.
Yep.
All righty.
Okay.
Until next time.
Until next week. All right.
Thanks.
You. See ya.